Welcome everyone to our California VOAD conference. We're so glad that you're here. For those that are wandering around, Valerie Mahanovich, find a seat and we'll get started. Thank you so much. We're so grateful to have you all. And my name's Kevin Cox. I'm with Hope Crisis Response Network. I also chair the NorCal VOAD and the State of California VOAD. And we are so especially glad to be able to present all about VOADs to you today. The very unique thing, and as I was wandering the room and talking to a lot of folks, we have new individuals that are trying to get to know more about what is a VOAD, how do VOADs operate. And you're going to learn more about that from one of the other presentations coming up this morning. But I'll say this, is that keep in mind, it's so important to when we look at VOADs is that emergency management, we are the labor force to the local counties. So you're going to hear more about that, and I'm really looking forward to the ladies' presentation. They've done 2 already this week, and it's been very, very popular. You've heard Aaron talk a little bit about the QR codes and the Wi-Fi on your tabletops, and I'm going to bypass that. I think we have a Mentimeter that's up and running. Go ahead and participate with that. But I'd like to introduce, well, in just a moment, we also have a bingo game in front of you. You'll hear more about that bingo game, and basically it's a disaster geared type of bingo game where you can wander around and find people that you can cross off or put the name into. So enjoy playing that. At this time, I'd like to invite Ryan Crowe to come up. Ryan is with North Valley Community Social Services, and while he's coming that long walk, we want you to know we have had a lot of fun with this week. Everybody knows what an acronym is, and everybody knows that our world is filled with acronyms. So anytime that you hear an acronym, shout out or raise your hand, and whoever the speaker is needs to put $1 in the pot. All right? And so we're going to do that again, and who did we decide the fund's going to today? Is it going to NVCSS, or are we going to, see, there's the first $1. Yeah, okay, I'll put $1 in, and so we've been gifting that. But I want to introduce our host to you. Ryan is just a terrific partner in our VOADs here, and works here with North Valley Community Social Services. So Ryan?
Hello everyone, my name is Ryan. I work for Northern Valley Catholic Social Service, or NVCSS. I owe $1 apparently. Yeah, we are very honored and excited to have you all here just to kind of go over a couple things. So our restrooms are right there. Our emergency exits you have one here, you have one out the back, and then you have one where a lot of people came in through. We also do have a kitchen too. If you want hot water or ice, feel free to use that as needed. And we're very excited for you all to be here. So,
yeah, thank you, Ryan. I'd like to thank our sponsors for allowing us to put on this conference. We have Cal OES, and you'll get to hear from Cal OES later today. We have several that are in the room. We've got our good friends from United Way. Make sure you get a chance to meet Larry and Matt and Theresa that are floating around. They are our sponsors for the, I saw that. Yeah, Theresa. She's got a sign in the back of the room, just so you know. She gets to hold up the signs that tell us when to stop. And so she's not trying to be annoying. She's just trying to keep this guy on task. And part of the problem is that if I feel a little bit down today, it's because my wife caught me drinking decaf by accident. So we need to stay up caffeinated. So and then also Listos. I love that over here. They're all over here. Yeah. So we'd like to thank them all. And then as we mentioned, we are already part of the NVCSS. And I was going to tell everybody to turn their cell phones off, but guess whose phone is going off? Please silence your cell phones. And also, we are, again, we're so thankful to NVCSS, another $1, for their time. I'd also like to introduce you at this time to one of the things that the goals that we've had is to get you to know your local emergency manager and those that are in charge. And so we're privileged to have Lieutenant Rob Sandbloom with us. And Rob, if you'd like to come on up and just welcome the crowd to Reading. We love Reading. We've done a lot of work here in Reading, unfortunately, but it's been good. So, Rob?
Thank you, Kevin. Morning, everybody. As Kevin said, Rob Sandbloom, Shasta County Sheriff's Office. I'm currently assigned to the Office of Emergency Services. There's an acronym for that. I did not use it. Okay. I have been doing emergency management in some capacity with the Sheriff's Office for about 20 years. When I started, I had hair, and for each incident that I went to, I lost some hair. So that'll show you how many incidents I've been to, whether it's been disaster or some type of critical incident within Shasta County or across the state, because we do respond out of state to help our other partners. I started out as a volunteer with the Sheriff's Office as an explorer and then as a reserve deputy, so I understand what it's like to be a volunteer, and I really appreciate that. Most of my career as a search and rescue member, overhead team member, or the search and rescue manager for the county, we deal with volunteers. We have paid staff that manage the incident or manage the search, but it's the volunteers that go out and beat the brush for us and get everything done. And without those volunteers, the Sheriff's Office could not do the job that we do and serve the community the way we serve the community. That being said, volunteers, organized, active in disaster. Right? All right? We cannot do the job without you folks as well. Part of the relationship we have is fostering the relationship, is meeting, getting to know everybody, having conversations, whether it's about a concert you're going to this weekend, and what about this weekend do we have coming up? It's a big holiday, right?
Yeah, that's right.
No, I said the big holiday this weekend. No, this weekend, the big holiday. Come on.
Three-day weekend.
What?
Three veterans. No, he said.
Who's playing ball? I
What?
don't know. Somebody's playing ball.
No. Today's the anniversary for the campfire, but it's the big birthday this weekend.
Marines.
Yes, thank you. Yes, 249 years, right? 10 for 5, all right? And then you're all very welcome to have Monday off for Veterans Day. So for all the veterans in here, thank you very much for your service as well. But again, without you guys here, without fostering these relationships, and that's the key. When I'm out running an incident and everything's going on and 100 things are going on, I don't always remember to call Teresa and Mike, Kimberly's hiding, stuff like that. They reach out to me. And when I see that their name's on the phone, that, okay, that's somebody I fostered a relationship, that's somebody I know the purpose of why they're calling me, and I might not answer the phone or answer a text right away, but I am going to call them back as quickly as I can. And it's because we've come and fostered these relationships. We're collaborating, we're cooperating, we're communicating. Right? And we just had an incident here, and that's what I did. I reached out to, we did some evacuations, but we did not open a shelter. But I let Kimberly know what we were doing, so in case she saw stuff on media. Teresa reached out to me on her own, says, hey, we're here, you need 211, what do we have going on? I briefed her up, say, not yet, but this is what we have. And then the same thing with our public health that does care and sheltering. And again, that's because of all these meetings we have, these getting together and having these kind of functions is why we work well. And working well, I will say in the North State, we're very lucky to have this group. Guys like Mike, Teresa, Kimberly, all of you in this room. Because I've been on OES meetings where they've... I don't know that's an acronym for the state. But I've been on those meetings, and it's all 58 counties up and down the state, and they talk about care and housing. They talk about evacuations. They talk about this group. And it's shocking to me, south of here, how many people don't know what volunteers organized active and disasters are. And up here, it's like, what do you mean? We use them all the time. So again, if you're new to this, welcome. This is a great organization. It helps the community, and without the people in this room, we won't serve the community properly. Thank you.
I'd like to, at this time, to introduce you to a good friend of mine, and you're going to hear me say that a lot. I have a lot of good friends in the disaster world. And Matt, if you'd like to make your way up, this is Matt Plotkin, and he is representing the United Way, for whom we would not be able to put on these conferences. And so, Matt, thank you so much. I appreciate you being here.
Good morning. Thank you, Kevin. It's an honor to be here. This is the third one of the week, and it's been a great week to be with VOAD folks, ding ding, voluntary organizations active in disaster folks.
I'll pay your dollar.
Thank you, Larry. And we started in San Jose, and on Wednesday we were in Sacramento. And today we're finishing here with good friends. Thank you, Ryan, for hosting. Again, my name is Matt Plotkin. I'm with United Way of Northern California. I'm the Director of Equity and Advocacy, and I also oversee our disaster services. I've been with United Way for almost 4 years in December. 6 years ago, I did not know all the acronyms I know now. I awoke to a massive smoke cloud over my house, and just like many people did in Butte County, and discovered that the campfire was exploding all over the place, over the ridge, as we call it, and the North State, as well as many people in Butte County, our lives have been changed since then. Some of the lives were lost that day. Later in the morning, we'll take a moment to honor those who were lost. And many folks in this room I met, and I'm eternally grateful for meeting you, for seeing the ways that you care about the community that we live in, and bringing everything you have and putting it on the table to be offered to those who are impacted by the campfire. So I want to personally thank you and honor the ways that you have dedicated your time, your treasure, your talent to helping those who were impacted by the campfire 6 years ago. So thank you. My other role or other hat that I wear is as the vice chair of the Butte Glen VOAD. We have all of our elected officers in the room this morning from Butte Glen VOAD. Hillary Crosby, who is our chair. And then we have our communications coordinator, Jake Fender, also present with us. So glad to see us fill in the room. And the other thing I want to hit on is, yes, we, United Way, were sponsoring this, but really the funding came from taxpayer dollars funneled through the Listos program, which is a part of Cal OES, ding, 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 initiative and campaign. And so I want to walk us through the 5 Listos steps. I'm going to do it a little differently than I did it the other morning. I want to see how many of us know the Listos steps and then have implemented them. So can anyone raise a hand and just say out loud one of the 5 Listos steps? Can you elaborate on? I see a really wanting hand back there in the corner. Yes. All right, Go Box. Who has a Go Box? Who has already created their own Go Box? Okay, a few of us. How many of us have actually downloaded and signed up for some sort of alert? Okay, that's pretty good. That's way better than the Go Box, folks. So, the work we all do, It's kind of like being in the airplane. You put the mask on first and then you help others. Let's create our own go boxes, people. All right. Number 3 is a stay. Does anyone have a stay box if you have to stay at home? Oh, wow. Okay, 5 people in the room. And then I skipped one. Who has a plan that's communicated to those who are in your household? All right, that's a good number. Okay, we got a wiggly. And then lastly, who has helped friends and neighbors get ready? That should be all of us, right? Okay, not all the hands going up. All right, now we've walked through the Listos steps and we can check off that we've done our Listos engagement for the day. Thank you very much. We'll be putting that into our spreadsheet. And I want to do take one last moment and introduce my CEO, Larry Olmstead, who is with us this morning, and it is because of your dedication and commitment to come alongside those who are impacted by disaster that we have the opportunity to be here this morning. You started that, Larry, you started that with, before the Carr fire in 2018, with fires up in Siskiyou County, and continue to push us as a team to impact and make people's lives better who have been impacted by disasters. So thank you, Larry. Please, Larry.
Thank you, Matt. Larry, you going to come up?
Very quick, because I know you guys have work to do. I actually just have a couple of things to say. One, gentleman came up here from Northern Valley Catholic Social Service, and I didn't hear any applause. I think we need to give the gentleman a hand. Ryan, right? Yeah, thank you. Northern Valley Catholic Social Service is such an important partner in this work. The other 2 things I needed to say. United Way is everything. We don't do anything alone, and we don't really think it's very important to take much credit for things. The question is work getting done? Is the community moving ahead and thriving? And nothing we do or are involved in is so emblematic of that than volunteer organizations. Active in disaster. I actually was the administrator for a couple of years of the voluntary organizations active in disaster in San Jose, so I should know this by heart. So it's just such a joy to see everybody here and knowing the importance of working together. We saw it in Shasta County during the Carr fire. It was amazing. See, Mike is here from Lions, all these other people. It's just amazing what can be done when we all work together. The second thing I wanted to say is one of the things we've learned at United Way, and I think probably everybody here has learned, is that issues of equity are as present or more present in the disaster scenario than in any other area. Every wildfire or other disaster we have had to address in our community has impacted disproportionately vulnerable communities that were vulnerable to begin with, whether through economic hardship or demographic, race or whatever you want to call it. So I wanted to leave that with you as you do your work, to keep that in mind as we plan for and respond to disaster situations. I think it's very important, and there are things we can do to make sure we're responsive to that need. Otherwise, I'm going to leave it to you all. This is just so energizing to see all the people who are here and the work that you represent and will do for our communities. Thank you very much.
Disasters happen in every community, and they come in all shapes and sizes, from a simple incident affecting one community to a major catastrophe affecting an entire region. A hurricane, for example, can cause a massive storm surge and powerful winds, which can lead to flooding, collapsed buildings, fire, loss of power, and other consequences. When these widespread impacts cascade and multiply, we have a catastrophe on our hands. The government will immediately initiate a response to address these challenges. And in the Emergency Operations Center, or EOC, the emergency managers will activate plans to understand the scope of the disaster, to ensure that help reaches those in trouble, and to coordinate police officers, firefighters, and medical teams to make communities safe and secure as soon as possible. There are also a number of non-governmental, community, and faith-based agencies and organizations that are active during a disaster and will leap into action and work with the government to provide emergency food, shelter, supplies, and more to those in need. The problem is that there is often little communication between different agencies and organizations serving the same community. And even though they can help one another, they may not be aware of each other's efforts. Without information about the operations of other organizations, they could potentially hurt their local recovery effort by duplicating resources, wasting funding and time, putting field staff in danger, and even directly hindering another organization's work. For example, let's say that we encounter a certain community that's been affected by a disaster, and there are two organizations that have decided to lend a hand and supply much-needed resources. Since they're not communicating with each other, imagine they are both providing home cleanup kits. But neither of them is providing food, which the community needs. With a quick exchange of information, one of the organizations could start providing meals. This way, two of the community's needs will be met. During a disaster, these connections are best made through communication networks coordinated with the local Office of Emergency Management. These networks bring together community organizations and agencies during a response. Since the emergency managers in the EOC have a big picture view of what is happening, they can interact and share information. An example of one of these communication networks is the local Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster, or VOAD. VOAD is a network of non-governmental, community, and faith-based agencies and organizations that specialize in disaster services and convene on a regular basis for information exchange, even when there are no disasters. Although each agency or organization is in charge of its own operation, the members communicate with one another so they can share emergency information and coordinate emergency efforts to provide vital services to those in need. Oftentimes, VOAD has a representative that sits in the EOC with the emergency managers and can help provide critical information on unmet needs and available resources. Some are affiliated with national organizations and should link with them, as these larger agencies will be present during a disaster as well. It is critical to understand that these connections cannot be formed during the chaos that surrounds a catastrophe. We must connect before a disaster strikes and stay connected. Learn how you should connect with your local emergency management office now. From them, you can obtain accurate emergency information and details on how to volunteer. Visit their website and become familiar with the different programs and educational materials that are offered. Sign up for emergency alerts if available. As soon as disaster strikes, check with your local emergency management office to see if it's safe to go into the affected zones, and then determine how you can join the team and help your neighbors. You should also become familiar with the VOAD in your jurisdiction and introduce yourself and your organization or agency so that when disaster strikes, you can be an effective part of that response. To make our communities as safe and secure as possible, we need to bring together all of our resources, connecting our government partners and responders to our professional and voluntary non-governmental agencies active during a disaster, as well as to our neighborhood-based community groups. When we do that, we create an emergency team that has the best experience, the best equipment, and the best local knowledge to deal with any disaster of any shape or size.
I borrowed it from someone. I don't remember where.
It is a great video, though. So we're going to talk about the California State VOAD now. So you can see we are, as Adriana said, national VOAD. We have all the states have their own VOAD. California is so large, we actually have two divisions, NorCal, which has 48 counties, SoCal, which has 10. Question was asked on Wednesday, why? Basically, it's population base. You know, when you're looking at that, it's a little heavier down in SoCal. There's also the fact that we have these lovely mountains that kind of cut off being able to support each other. And so, geography does play a role in this as well. And so for the California VOAD, just the things to be aware of is we have quarterly meetings, we'll host disaster calls, we'll provide technical assistance to your local VOAD, to your long-term recovery groups. We are currently, 2 years into running committees that mirror what National VOAD does. So Adriana chairs our VOAD startup committee. I chair our long-term recovery group committee. We have Amy with disaster case management, and Kevin's with our construction committee. So we have different committees to help all of the VOADs across the state get their best practices together, communicate on issues, share resources, so that you have that information ideally before you have a disaster for your VOAD to respond. Other ways we can support you, really, it's just picking up the phone. So when you have a disaster, you have a need. If you don't have that partner in your Rolodex, right, so looking at the map there, view it as a puzzle, right? So you're looking at, I have an incident, here's the puzzle I have to put together, I've got some gaps. If you don't have partners to fill that gap, you would reach out to Kevin as the chair of California VOAD, and between him and Val Mahanovich, they should be able to find you their resources either through state VOAD partners or national VOAD partners that can help with that. And conversely, when you have an incident and you're overwhelmed, they can serve as that vetting agency that people reach out to till you have time to breathe to be able to connect to those resources. Okay, and then these are, wrong. Too many buttons here. There we go. These are just some of our VOAD partners across the state. And many of these have connections with national and international disaster service providers, including working with FEMA, Cal OES, Red Cross, Catholic Charities, United Way, Mennonite Disaster Service, Team Rubicon, and many more. And so the idea is that you as a local VOAD can call on them to provide support and draw upon the resources they have for your communities. So examples of that might be you need cots, you're getting those from Red Cross. You need KN95 masks, you're getting those from Cal OES. If you're needing mattresses, you might either be going to FEMA for those mattress donations, or you're going through Good 360 and Global Empowerment Mission to get those delivered to you, to get those out to the community members in need, right? And just one final note on this, there's more than 70 national organizations that play a role in this disaster cycle. And then the reality is you might not need them, but you've got dozens in your community that uniquely do what you need. Adriana said having that independent senior center that's able to provide those resources to help there, looking at your resources locally is going to be key to setting you up for success, because it really is just a giant puzzle you're putting together. Every incident, every disaster is going to look different puzzle, different needs, different partners that are going to stand up. And it's just having that flexibility and having those relationships that we keep talking about to help you with that.
So what does a VOAD actually do? We don't provide direct services, but we operate through what's known as the 4 C's: collaboration, coordination, cooperation, and communication. And we also get money, materials, and muscle to support the disaster response. VOADs, as you've heard us say, provide the structure, the coordination, the facilitation, and assurance that all partners are brought together and will work together. VOADs collaborate with all partners who provide what's known as disaster wraparound services. This is feeding, shelter operations, transportation, emergency financial assistance, disaster case management, spiritual and emotional care. These are your partners. Before you heard me sort of mention them by name, like food banks, these are the areas that they work in. And it's through this coordination that VOADs help to identify gaps and unmet needs. They find overlooked communities. They help, as you saw in the video, avoid duplication of services. And it's this coordination that we heard mentioned earlier that this is what provides the equitable distribution of resources and services to everybody impacted in disaster, right? That's why you want everybody at the table, is to make sure that those people, everyone who's impacted is getting help. And we know that oftentimes it's the most socially vulnerable residents that are the most impacted and have the longest road to recovery. So it's really important that all these partners be here together. VOAD partners know how to reach and speak with our communities. We know who needs printed flyers. We know who needs information on a social media chat group that they have. We know who needs videos. We know what languages are spoken in our communities. And we know which communities are food deserts or are geographically isolated if something happens. And it's these CBO partners, as I've shared already, who work on a daily basis with the most socially vulnerable people throughout your county.
And we're going to just highlight those 4 C's briefly here. So first one, cooperation. We need each other, right? No single organization or governmental agency has all the answers for the challenges unique to your community and that disaster that you're facing. Communication. You know, the whole concept here is you're going to maintain beneficial channels for communication. You're going to listen carefully. You're going to do more listening than talking. And you're going to deal openly with concerns, because communicating that, over-communicating that, setting expectations, managing that through your communication is key, because otherwise it's a game of telephone and whack-a-mole in the community where it turns into one need is voiced and it turns into VOAD is going to provide that. And so, again, communicating early, often, clearly, concisely. One of the important things to do is sharing that VOAD is, as Adriana said, it's that framework. It's all about what your member agencies are doing, what resources they bring, what their accomplishments are, their capabilities, their commitments. Sharing that information is essential. And it should be really simple. It can be an email blast, press release, social media post, whatever you're doing, whatever works in your community. And then knowing, of course, how your community communicates and knowing how your survivors will communicate. We had talked at our NorCal VOAD meeting recently about a community that is not plugged into any of the alert systems. There's a large disenfranchised community that communicates exclusively through WhatsApp. And so identifying that need, sharing that with emergency management and the VOAD so that when we're communicating where people get their information, valuable win to set the community up right? And then coordination. So if you're fortunate enough to have a seat in your EOC, you are right there to help coordinate information and resources between governmental agencies and your CBO partners. And I've already put $20 in there, so I think we're down to like 10 now. I'm going to use a bunch of acronyms, forgive me. I prepaid, yeah. And this enables you to work together to provide the best possible service to those impacted by disaster. If you're not there having that relationship, you don't have to have a seat in the table to be that person that's going to be reached out to. But what you have to do is make sure that you're following through on that coordination. If the OEM is reaching out, they're going to ask you. They're not going to task you, right? Because we're voluntary. But they're going to ask you, do you have a partner who has this resource? You're going to reach out to your network, see what you can find. Sometimes it's a little thing. Sometimes it feels big, but then you find that partner. My OEM during COVID, when it hit and decided they needed 3,000 volunteers the next day to deliver meals to all of our kids in the county who had free and reduced lunch. 3,000 volunteers that were already vetted, screened, and that was a heavy lift. Luckily, we had our Rotary District Foundation had 3,500 volunteers. They met that need. And they were all willing to work because they were bored sitting at home. So it was a win. But it was a you want what? And then a deep breath, do it, made it happen. Finally, collaboration. VOAD is all about building relationships, being familiar with all your disaster service providers in your county. And these relationships, you're going to build them over time. You're going to get to know more. You want to build them before the disaster. Because quite honestly, as your bingo card says, in a disaster, it's too late to be passing out business cards. It's going to be 9 months later before you follow up.
So this is the disaster cycle. VOADs, just like our partners, work throughout it through preparedness, response, and recovery. It's important to start to build your VOAD or further your disaster response preparedness in non-disaster times, in blue skies. And the best way to get people to the table initially is to think about what's in it for them. Why are they taking time out of their day when they have 30 programs they're running and projects they're leading to come to your VOAD meeting? It's what's in it for them. You have to think about what brings them to the table. Why should they be a part of this collaboration? I have made it clear in the 6 years of building Marin County's VOAD that I am there to serve our nonprofit partners. I ask them to come to the table. I'm not asking for anything from them. I'm asking, how can I support you in supporting your communities? And that's the way, if we get in that mindset of what's in it for them, why should they come, that's a great way of trying to help build it. In Marin County, to bring people to the table, we've provided PPE, protective equipment. We've handed out COVID test kits. We've provided disaster preparedness training and assistance with emergency drills. Meet regularly, build relationships and trust. It takes time. It takes time to build it with government partners. If you're not within government, it takes time to build it with the nonprofit partners if you're not a nonprofit partner. And understanding, what each one needs is very helpful. Develop a network of resources and services. You've heard Valerie mention this. Have a list of where are the commercial kitchens, who has the volunteers, who can provide transportation. Understand what all the partners do. Promote disaster preparedness and educational opportunities. Bring people together through meetings, share best practices. After an incident, get together and do an after-action review. What worked, what didn't work, where did we fail? That's one of my favorite questions, asking my partners. And they've gotten very comfortable saying, this didn't work, and we fix it. All of this will help you build the coordinated disaster response, which is what you need to support your communities. In gray skies, in disaster times, what does this coordination look like? In Marin County, we hold conference calls. When we were without power, the entire county was cut off from power. We had PG&E shut off, had a public safety power shutoff. This is when we were first learning about them, and they cut off the entire county. And part of our county was out of power for an entire 7-8 days. We still held conference calls twice a day. Verizon and T-Mobile, and they managed to work for a couple of days, and people would go find pockets and jump on these calls. I could not believe that we had 50 partners on these calls still jumping in, trying to figure out. They wanted to know what was going on, and they wanted to help. Having these conference calls is critical because it's a situational update. It's where everybody can hear what's going on. It's where your government partners can hear about what's happening in the communities, and it's where communities can hear directly from government partners what's going on. In Marin County, we have a seat in the Emergency Operations Center. I think that is critical because that's what's helping build your collaboration between government and nonprofit partners. And when I hold these conference calls, our Office of Emergency Management Director sits in. And the last time we had one of these conference calls, he learned about an unincorporated town because of the atmospheric rivers that swept through. This town, actually, their sewage treatment plant had been down for 3 days, and nobody knew. And an unincorporated town is the responsibility of the county. But they didn't know each other. They didn't know who to call, and they found it out on a VOAD conference call. So being part of your emergency operations center, holding these calls, getting everybody to the table, making sure they hear what's going on, that bidirectional information is critical. We'll have our public information officer join these calls and tell everybody, this is the messaging that's coming out later today. Share it with your communities. Build trust. Communities, the last thing they want is to sit there in the dark not knowing what's happening. And even though government is active and working and nonprofit partners are working, community members don't necessarily see it. So giving them information from the beginning is critical. We're going to take you very quickly through a tale of two disasters. The first one was in Marin County. It was a lack of collaboration, and then Valerie's going to talk about collaboration where it was successful. But in Marin County, we had an atmospheric river. This was a period of many of them. We have a community in southern Marin that is lower income. It's people of color. It's cut off. It's a food desert. There's one ingress and egress point that gets flooded, and that's what that is. That is from these storms. And we knew that it was coming. The storm was expected late in the afternoon when people were going to be traveling in and out because of work and school and everything they needed to do in their lives. And I do want to say that everybody worked in good faith, but they all worked in their own silos. So Red Cross set up a shelter. We also had an encampment nearby that also gets flooded. So Red Cross set up a shelter, and the intention was for the unhoused individuals to be able to use it. Flood vehicles were staged near this area in order to transport residents back and forth as needed. Department of Public Works set up road signs to direct people. Here's what happened. No one told anybody at the encampment that the shelter was set up. So Red Cross spent about 4 hours getting into the area because of the traffic and the roads, set up a shelter that nobody used. Nobody told the residents about the flood vehicles, so people were stranded on both sides and couldn't get in and out. And while it was not a massive disaster, and there were no fatalities, and it really only lasted, for the afternoon and early evening, it's an example of what happens when we don't talk. Had we all taken a moment to not rush out and just coordinate and figure out what we were all doing, we would have had a flawless response.
And even when you think you're flawless, you pat yourself on the back and you realize all the things you didn't do, because every disaster is a learning opportunity. So for San Diego, our example is from the January 2024 floods. It was a FEMA declared disaster. It was an odd one. We had no public assistance. We only had individual and housing assistance awarded from FEMA, so a little different. We obviously immediately sprang into action. We were supporting our county, who called us into the EOC, and so we were coordinating muck outs, cleanups, mold suppression, getting all these pieces together, and that went really well. So we had partners who we called in. Habitat for Humanity of California, HCRN, Southern Baptist, and they put together a bilingual training video on mold suppression that met our needs in California, because the national VOAD partner that helped us provided something unique for hurricanes that did not work in SoCal's much drier environment. So we had different materials, and we had to redo the workshop to get that information out to people. So very helpful that we were able to do those things. We had some hiccups though, right? So we had larger organizations, national partners coming in and not coordinating with our VOAD. And they were showing up and talking to jurisdictions and setting up housekeeping. One of them actually set up with one of our cities. Luckily, their OEM he'd actually been a VOAD officer several years ago. And he's like, hey, so we're doing this thing. Did you know about this? No, we did not know. So we made it right. And pulled everybody into the team, but we were, Val Mahanovich and Zach were heavily monitoring people coming in and helping manage that workflow because we were a little busy. Kevin was helping a lot as well. And then, because you need to know what they need. We had partners coming in to set up a bunkhouse for 50 people. That takes a little planning. It takes me signing an MOU and having an insurance accord that indemnifies that jurisdiction to cover that if you're under me, if you're not doing it under yourself. So a lot of coordination there. One of our biggest challenges was that we were focused on working with what the jurisdictions were saying, and those CBOs in the community were blue sky organizations were responding to the community's needs. So we came in behind the 8 ball. Part of it's we didn't have relationships with those communities because it was in the middle of urban centers. And our disasters, typically we do wildfire really well. We can do an earthquake. We don't have a lot of flood. We don't have floods on city storm channels that go through the heart of the city. And we had 11 inches of rain in a year normally. We had it in about 4 hours. We had people who were sitting on their couches, their windows burst, and their couch floated up to the ceiling, and that's what saved them from drowning. So really scary, really frightening. We were not prepared, and because it's flood, it's not like a wildfire where you go through and you can see the damaged and destroyed homes. We had no idea, because if they cleaned up that water line outside, it looked good until you go inside. And so that's been a real big challenge. Understanding that they're culturally competent, we had to hire for our DCMP program, hire from and of the community. And so some of those relationships between our minority populations are prickly. And so we've had to dance really delicately. That's created a lot of tension in the community. Working on that has been very, very challenging. And again, so what we think we know and do well, even when we coordinate well, it is not going to be what you want it to be. And it's kind of like putting on an event, right? Everybody shows up and they're like, this is great. And you're like, I got a list 20 pages long of things that I should have done better. And that's okay, because you don't want to let the perfect get in the way of getting things done, right? And closing remarks, just to piggyback on that, we're all more effective and efficient in that disaster if we're coordinated, right? California, we're subject to floods, severe weather, earthquakes, that tornado in LA a couple of years ago, mudslides, wildfires. And we have all of these disasters. And the best way to support your community is to be connected to the state VOAD, your regional VOAD, your partner VOADs. One of the most helpful things for me during the flood is my 2 counties up, my San Bernardino VOAD chair sat in on my meetings just for moral support, because he had had a flood the year before. And he was taking care of me personally because it was just too much. And so, connecting to those resources. I was reaching out to state VOAD all the time, Cal OES, national VOAD, like this partner showed up, who are they? And, can you help me understand why they're at my door? Knowing what you need, knowing who your partners are to help you, because you need that access to that critical, timely, and accurate information, right? You need the information from your OEM about the disaster. You need to know what's going on, boots on the ground, what your partners are doing, so you can go back to that puzzle piece and know what those holes are, those gaps that need to be filled, and work on relationships to fill those. And that coordination is key, because you're going to do that through VOAD. And so the reality, just for California VOAD, why we're here today talking about this, is you have this larger network. Please take advantage of it. Take advantage of our committees. Love to see any of you, before you have a disaster, sign up for that disaster case management committee and that long-term recovery group committee, because you want to practice and learn while you're not drinking from the fire hose of a disaster, right? So really just take advantage of us and what we can provide you. Because what VOAD should be doing, right, is bring everyone together. So together we're going to create that resilient system that will serve everyone impacted by a disaster.